Our goal in this section is to get a forest-level view of the executive neural circuits that permit our nervous system to govern itself. To that end, let's now look at some of the principal neural circuits of the human cortex. Here's some lovely fMRI data from a 2011 paper by Yo, Buckner, and others. What you see here is a parcellation of the cortex into 7 main cortical regions. These areas were found using so-called functional connectivity analysis. Functional connectivity is a technique that allows researchers to see what parts of the brain covary or change together in their activity patterns. Even when people are at rest, just lying in the MRI scanner getting scanned, not doing any particular task at all, brain areas will covary if they are part of a common neural circuit. By looking across 1,000 resting human brains, these authors came up with a map of what parts of the cortex are part of a common circuit. They could infer that they comprised a common circuit because neural activity varied in a positively correlated way. Note that this color coding scheme is not based on local neural circuit architecture as Brodmann's areas are, but is based on correlation of neural activity across the whole cortex. What you'll immediately notice is that a given functionally defined neural network, defined by a single color here, is not located at a single location in the brain. Rather, it is distributed across the lobes of the brain. First, let's look at the light blue area. This circuit corresponds to motor output and sensory input areas that have a somatotopic representation. We can therefore assume that the blue areas correspond to circuitry associated with perception of the body and motoric control of the body. The next circuit we see here is the red one. This is sometimes called the default mode network because a neuroscientist named Marcus Raichle noticed that it was activated when people were not doing a task in the fMRI scanner. Here's another view of the default mode network. You might ask why these brain areas covary in their activity. Well, it's because they are talking to each other and providing one another with inputs via long axons that connect them, as shown here. Other people noticed that these same red areas were active when people were thinking about other people, mind wandering or daydreaming, or thinking about themselves. So it seems that the red circuit is fundamentally involved with simulating minds and social activity. Scientists noticed that this red circuitry was downregulated when people were actively and willfully paying attention to the execution of some task. Now let's move on to another circuit. It was various parts of the green and yellow circuitry that seemed to become activated as the default mode network became deactivated and vice versa, suggesting a mutually inhibitory relationship between a task-positive and a task-negative network. The green circuitry seems most involved with making and planning volitional eye movements and shifts of endogenous attention that are subject to volitional control. The yellow circuitry also seems to be involved in volitional processing, but not so much in shifts of attention as in planning, deliberation, consideration, weighing, and selection of options. Since the green and yellow circuits likely operate in tandem to decide what to do or attend to next, various parts of the green and yellow circuits are sometimes called the dorsal attentional network. In contrast, shown in violet here, is the so-called ventral attentional network. This one is not subject to volitional control. It seems to subserve so-called exogenous attention, which is the automatic grabbing of attention by things that suddenly move or blink or that make a sudden noise. Finally, at the back of the brain, shown in purple here, is the largely retinotopic cortex associated with visual processing. And in light green at the bottom of the front of the brain, in the ventromedial and orbital prefrontal regions, is neural circuitry thought to be involved in the regulation of emotion. Now, granted, this is a very crude parcellation of the brain. Much finer parcellations of neural circuitry are possible and have been carried out. And certain circuits are simply not shown here. For example, the many non-cortical circuits involved in reward are not visible in this view of the cortex, though reward plays a central role in our behavior and thinking. And also, not shown here is another subcortical structure, the amygdala, which plays several roles, including the processing of potential danger and the triggering of associated emotions such as fear, or bodily reactions such as the fight-or-flight response. Even though this is a coarse picture of the main circuits of cortex, it does allow us to gain a forest-level view of cortex. We can see that there are two primary neural circuits associated with executive control and willing, namely volitional control of attention, associated with the green areas, and the volitional control of events involved in planning and deliberation, associated with the yellow areas. These volitional circuits exist in contradistinction to apparently non-volitional ones, such as the ventral attentional or exogenous attentional network, the violet areas, or the default mode network, the red areas. In the next section, we'll dissect the volitional circuits in a bit more detail.